out of here because Modred is now fleeing from his uncle Arthur, who's after him. These are real guys. Get your Ordnance Survey map. To the east of Dalgethley, Camlan Mountain and Camlan Valley. Same thing. Little winding valley, ideal place to try and stop someone with a small number of men, bottle them up, you know, like a bottleneck. What's the villagers say? Oh, yes. Started down there, it did, you know. Took 3 days to get through. They know all about it. Of course, Oxford and Cambridge think that Wales is on the dark side of the moon. Actually, we're not, like, you know. When I say we, it's the Welsh half of me talking, right? Sometimes I'm Welsh, sometimes I'm English. You have to forgive me, I'm a Brit. But the point I'm making is none of these things or places are hard to find. They're harder to miss than they are to find. Now, there are about 200 stones in Wales of ancient kings. BBC made a programme, you know, on King Emperor Carausius. Have you ever heard of Carausius? Anybody? No? There was a triple, often there were 2 and 3 emperors ruling together. Diocletian had a co-emperor named Maximinius, Maximanius or something like that. But there was a third one in the triumvirate, Carausius. So they ruled a chunk of the empire each around, we're talking about the 270, 280 period, right? Carausius is a British king, Carawn. And he ruled Britain and Gaul. And he's known as the Admiral. He had a big fleet, which stopped any of the other 2 getting at Britain, you see. Now, the joke is, BBC Time Watch said, there is no trace whatsoever of Carausius in Britain. So I wrote him a letter and I said, what do you make of the tombstone of Carausius found at Penmachno with his name on it? It's in the Carmarthen Museum. I had a really hot letter back. No one else has complained about our programme. Well, he wouldn't bloody know. You know, it's hot stuff, isn't it? So, you know, there are names of these kings all over stones. Now, my colleague bought a little group of papers, crumbling papers in a bookshop. He used to go around all the old bookshops buying old books and ferreting about. And there was some very good old second-hand bookshops down there at the time. One was brilliant. He bought these papers, he gave the guy a tenner. And in it, John Strange from England, from an antiquarian society in London, has gone into the darkest Africa of Wales to see if he could find Roman remains. So he goes around Glamorgan and Brecon and he's terribly disappointed. He can't find hardly any Roman remains. Be lucky if he did, because giraffes don't live in the North Pole. The Romans were hardly ever there, right? Now, when they were there as prisoners, they had a going rate, how much you paid for Roman legionary for a slave. Fact. Anyway, in this thing, he did find something he found interesting. It's a sort of 8 feet high stone, narrow one. The top is floral, right? The middle is a king, and he's holding a scepter in one hand, a sword in the other, and on the bottom is an inscription. It's in the alphabet that wasn't invented till 1800. And it says, Godufan the Exile. It's interesting, because Godufan was the king around the year 200. And he was exiled because he was a turbulent and drunkard. And it says Godufan the Exile. Now that really woke us up to reality, you know. Here we go, and he's terribly disappointed, this guy. He interprets this, he says, this must be a Viking king, a Viking king in Wales in the 6th century. The Vikings were never in Wales. Well, they did come there twice. They lost their fleet and the entire army got trapped on an island, a flat home in Cardiff Bay. So they weren't too successful. So this sort of thing is happening all the time, you see. And it's constant negativity, 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 negativity. It's like a drip, drip, drip. Now, instead of having nothing, all confusion, we have a magnificent history in great detail, remarkably accurate, and it belongs to us, all of us, right? You can't find King Lud of London. Yes, you can. He's peppered through the Welsh records and genealogy. That he recorded the English and the Welsh lines of kings. Lud of London was real. One of his sons is in the Songs of the Graves. And he's in the Songs of the Graves because he's fighting as a warrior, you know. His grave mound is said where it is. You can go along the banks of the Thames, I think it's Berkshire. His grave mound is still there. But if his son is real, Lud is real. King Coil of Colchester, father of Helen of the Cross, who are real people, he's a descendant of Lud. Ludd kicked Caesar's backside and threw him out of Britain. He did. What he did, Caesar invaded the second time, found it dead easy. Marching on the bank of the south bank of the Thames, nobody stopped him. Crossed the Thames, no problem. Got up towards St Albans and he said, hey, we've come all this way, there's no food and no cattle, because the Roman army depended on what it could find where it went. All the people have been taken away, all the cattle have been driven away, and they'd burnt the crops. Then he had the bad news. There's a British army blocking the Thames, the ford you came across. There's another British army attacking your fleet. It's in the records. So Caesar thinks, hang on, I'm in the middle of enemy territory, I got no grip. The British king had sent his army home for the winter. He sent them home for the winter. And he had 4,000 chariots stationed around Caesar's sort of beleaguered force, preventing them from getting at any food. Because they'd have to go out in groups, foraging for food, and these fast-moving charioteers, they'd sort them out. The folklore story is that Caswallon means viceroy, sent to Caesar and said, hey, come for supper. You're hungry. And he suggested that he go home. So Caesar went home, surrounded by the British army. So the English academics say this was a sign of respect for the Romans acting as an escort. By hell it was. It was making sure they got out of Britain as fast as they could without doing any more damage. Get them out. The description in Caesar's Gallic Wars is they piled the soldiers onto the ships, 3 times more soldiers per ship than they normally would. It's like the British withdrawal from Dunkirk and the American organised withdrawal from Vietnam. Saigon. They were battered. Ludd built a triumphal arch in London. He built the city of London, you see. Well, that's what the British records say. He built a remarkable city on the bank of the Thames. He built a triumphal arch. About 10 years ago, archaeologists found the remains of a triumphal arch at Ludgate. Must be Roman. Hang about, how did Ludd come to build it? Oh, it must be Roman. Everything they find, you find one stone on top of another, it's Roman. I'm telling you, if you do this, how myself and my colleague have not become totally infuriated and mad with this. There are 12 ancient Roman records of Druids. This gives them an idea of Druids. 11 of the records are about the Druids of the south of France, and one is dubious, maybe Britain origins. He didn't know anything about Britain. Huh? Large numbers of Roman emperors had British queens as wives. Numbers of Roman emperors were British. They don't tell you that. Very often the Roman Empire was split into 2 or 3. No, it wasn't just one empire going on. And they had Western emperors in the 320, 350, 340 era. Western emperors. 3 of them have left their gravestones in Glamorgan. They say, oh, it must be a Roman milestone. Hang on, there's no Roman road. It doesn't say how many miles from where to where. It just says a guy, you know. Eudaf, who kicked the lieutenant of Constantine the Great out in 320, 322, is a grandson of the Emperor Victorinus. Huh? How do you work it out? We've been told bullshit in large doses. And this is why the establishment love us so much. They really like myself and my colleague. We're top of their Christmas card list. Well, we're not going to give up. We're not going to stop. We've written 8 books so far, banging down the information, the Arthur conspiracy, because we go into detail. We don't just generalize. We stick it to them, you know. And we've written something on the hieroglyphs. We can read the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Did I say that? Well, Professor Sir John Morris Jones in 1896, he wrote the thesis and he said all the syntax and